Hi, I'm Terry Kyle, co-founder and CEO of WPX.net, arguably the world's fastest WordPress hosting company. And we have a new video series that we're starting with this episode, which is all about the stories of change seekers who are boldly trying to change the world or change their life or change their community. Any of these, we really want to find out more about their stories and what drives them and the impact that they're having and their plans for the future, that sort of thing. Firstly, I'm talking to John Zarbach, and John is a major in the US Army, and he's stationed currently in Kuwait, but actually he has big plans for a new business back in St. Louis, where he's from back in the US, where he has embraced this whole new technology, pretty radical, revolutionary technology to do with gym equipment and fitness, where you can actually compress down an entire week of training into about 20 or 30 minutes. So let's find out from John exactly a little bit about his background, his big dreams, his big ambitions, and also later in the video I asked John a very controversial question, which you need to watch through to see how he answers. And I asked him, if Netflix made a movie of his life, which actor would play him? So if you're curious about that, stay with me and we're going to find out more about John and which actor he chose for that controversial question.
Yeah, so I grew up in South St. Louis. I was born and raised St. Louis, Missouri. And let's see, I went to 5 different grade schools, 2 different high schools, 2 different colleges. I graduated from St. Louis University and Washington University in St. Louis through their ROTC program, commissioning into the Army. Enlisted at 18, but then went into the ROTC program around 2021. And let's see, that was in like 2006. Immediately went on my first deployment. I've been in the military for 19 and a half years. And so, as soon as I enlisted, that was it. That was really I did have some jobs, in between being active duty and full time. But I'm currently on my 4th tour in Kuwait. I served 3 tours up until 2018. And then coming home from my 3rd tour, I kind of decided that the full-time Army wasn't really for me anymore. There was kind of a desire for more, so to speak. And that's when I kind of figured out what my true purpose was on this planet, which is to help humans become better. I self-actualize by helping others self-actualize. And so started Biofit in 2018. At the time it was called Freedom Fitness. We have since rebranded. But it was a really quick happening. As soon as I experienced the ARX machines and learned about exercise science and high intensity training, I knew that was what I was going to spend the rest of my life doing. So I dove right in. And this was right after I had learned about blockchain technology and Bitcoin, and which I'm such a huge fan of and an advocate for. And so having at the time, my 2 favorite things in the whole world being able to come together, exercise and fitness and resistance, resistance training, and the potential for a networked machine that I can, bring blockchain technology and possibly Bitcoin and utilization tokens into, I felt like I had hit the absolute lottery. And so I've been doing that for almost 4 years now, and 3.5 years. And, when I get back from this deployment next year, I'm planning on retiring from the military, and with my 20 and a half years, and just committing my life to helping other people and serving just first St. Louis and hopefully, the United States, and then hopefully the world with and through Biofit.
With this big change that you've got coming up, John, has anybody around you, friends, family, work colleagues, have they been nervous for you, maybe almost discouraging you from taking on this, what might seem quite risky change in your life?
You know, it's a big change, I think, in one's life. It's a transition and a change that I've literally never experienced before, so I don't really know what to expect. I'm actually writing a book from my own kind of perspective, revolving around the idea of an identity death. You know, because this is the only life that I know. It's the only thing that I've kind of really ever done. I mean, I've done Biofit. You know, like I said, I started it in 2018, but I've been still doing almost completely full-time Army obligation even during then, right? And so, you know, there's a lot about being in the military, that their customs, their values, their resources, you know, that are seemingly unlimited. You know, there's so much difference about being in the military as opposed to not. And then just and yeah, I've never not been in the military. I've never not been in a position where a guaranteed paycheck wasn't there for me. And so I don't necessarily have any reservation or trepidation about believing in myself enough to make it. I don't think that's so much what it is. But just being in a position where like my life is my own and I'm not in uniform and in service to the Constitution or to the country rather, you know, in that capacity. That, yeah, I mean, that's,
Sure.
I think about that a lot, and I think it's going to be a good transition. I just don't know what it's going to look like. And so that creates maybe a little bit of anxiety from time to time.
A while back, John, I interviewed another long-term WPX customer, a guy called Dave Chess, and he runs kindlepreneur.com. And interestingly, in his case, he actually built a successful online business while serving in a US Navy nuclear submarine. He was kind of building it underwater almost. And I think there's a really interesting parallel here between Dave and you, in that it's quite common for military guys to have this entrepreneurial restlessness, and they're probably really good project managers, really disciplined, great on follow through. With this big change that you've got coming up, John, has anybody around you, friends, family, work colleagues, have they been nervous for you, maybe almost discouraging you from taking on this, what might seem quite risky change in your life?
I don't know if it's really discouragement. The only, and there's a lot of context to it, but I know we're somewhat limited on time, so I want to be transparent and honest, and I won't go into the super details about it. But I'd say, ironically, the only person that has probably not necessarily tried to talk me out of it, but has been very nervous for me was my grandma. Before she died last year. And because my grandma she was born in 1940, and she only knew an extremely hard life of trading dollars for hours, right? Like going into business or taking risk. I mean, it just seemed like she was allergic to it, right? But that was the life and the generation, and that was the environment that she came from. And so she was, you know, it didn't matter what it is that I was trying to do with my business, you know, and how excited I got, or even she would be so proud, obviously, of the successes, right? But even as I'm explaining success, right, she was just like, oh, but be careful, right?
Your rank now is major, is that correct, John?
Yeah. It is.
She would be proud of that, very proud.
Yeah, I mean, she saw me, she was able to see me become a major. I mean, she was able to see my success even through Biofit. Like I said, she only died last year. And so she was able to see, you know, just up to me transitioning out, going on this deployment, and, you know, hopefully taking Biofit to many higher levels than what it is right now. But I would say that for the most part, it's a mix, honestly. A lot of my close friends, a lot of the people that I associate with, they tend to be, they care about me, and they know that when I make my mind up about something, if I want it bad enough, that there is nothing that I won't do or sacrifice in order to achieve it. And so I get a lot of support from the inner circle. Now, when it comes to people in the military, I mean, it's like crabs in a bucket. As soon as you start talking anything about even retirement, even after 20 years, and I've got my 20, and it's like, wait a minute, what? You're getting out? Why would you do that? That's crazy. Like you don't even know what's going on out there. But what I've boiled that down to, based on the deeper context of a lot of those conversations, is that they're projecting a lot of their own fears and insecurities and desires of wanting to do something like that onto me, not necessarily consciously. But the people that I feel that are just like, you don't want to do that. Do you have any idea how expensive medical insurance is? Like, what if things don't go right? You're not going to get the paycheck anymore. And I feel like a lot of that isn't them trying to give good advice or trying to, like protect me necessarily. And it's not to say that they don't care. But after having so many of these conversations with military specific people, the culture has created a crabs in a bucket mentality where it's like, if anybody leaves, something's wrong, right? Like the matrix is broke. So to answer your question, I would say I get way more positive support than negative, but it's definitely a mix.
Now, out of all the different ways that you could help people, John, and there are many different possible pathways to do that, why fitness exactly?
Let's see. How do I want to answer that question? So it's fitness has just always kind of come easy to me, I think, in the sense that it feels very natural for me to do it, to want to learn about the body, about how it works, aesthetically. How can I, shape the body or sculpt the body to, a very pleasing, aesthetically pleasing look, not just for myself, but for other people who would want to do that. I'm naturally athletic. I love learning about food, and I love learning about all the biohacking stuff. The Jetsons was like one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. That and like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Ghostbusters. And I remember being so fascinated about all these really cool things about the future. And I also had an interest in, like, almost, I was enamored with like vampires growing up, but just the concept of like living for generations and just seeing the world change over and over and over. And so longevity and just being able to feel good and look good as long as possible. And I came from a family of laborers and union workers and stuff like that. And I just noticed that when they all got older, a lot of them, like the age that I am now, like they were just physically broke because they had just used their bodies in the service to the unions and through work, but like didn't have any like self-care. They didn't have any way of kind of taking care of themselves. It was just always output and no like reverse input. And so I feel that physical fitness, but like physically taking care of your body, both like structurally, muscularly, and like to support your immune system, I feel like that is the foundation of everything. Like the same way that you would build a mansion, right? Or build a skyscraper, the foundation of what that building rests on is the physicality of fitness. And when I discovered the machines that we use in our studio, and when I really truly understood exercise science, when I really learned what true proper exercise is, with the high intensity training philosophy that Arthur Jones developed in the 60s and 70s, and was further perpetuated by, professional bodybuilders like Dorian Yates, or by Dr. Doug McGuff and John Little in their book, Body by Science. When I finally learned, kind of, in my opinion, like what right looked like, it changed my life forever. And I feel like if you spend a life trying to amass wealth and empire and business, and even like spending all this time with your family, and just if you do all these things and neglect your physicality, if you neglect the temple that is the body, of the meat suit that you only get one of ever, then you're going to spend the latter years of your life, you're going to spend the money and the empire and the wealth and the time during those years basically just staying alive and not really living and thriving, and probably wanting to experience the things that you sacrificed and spent the first half of your life trying to do. And so
I think another way of putting it, John, and this is something I'm very interested in my own creative work outside of WPX, is that it's about unlocking much more potential that people have, and not in an authoritarian way, but just giving them options to possibly lead a much less mediocre life, and just releasing much more of their potential that they already have.
Yes, I would say that is probably a more elegant way to put it. Fitness comes easy to me in terms of doing and in terms of understanding. And quite frankly, I'm not that smart of a person. I think a lot, but I don't necessarily know if that makes me very intelligent. But there isn't really anything else that I'm probably smart enough to do. But because I have such a passion for this one thing, and I love doing it, and I feel just like you, I think just like you said, I feel like I've done it long enough and good enough that I feel confident about being able to reach back to somebody else and say, hey, I don't know everything, but I may know more than you. So let me help you bridge the gap. And then if, maybe I can help you find somebody who knows more than I do, but I can motivate them at least, hopefully,
Sure.
to just improve, right? Because it's not about being right or wrong, or doing it my way. It's just, I want to, just like when we're sent an iOS, version update, right? Every 6 months we update our friggin' software on our phones, right? Like every 6 months, I want to help a human being update the software, of their consciousness to make sure that they know that they can always be a little bit better.
In the case of Biofit, John, what is so interesting or compelling about these new machines and this new approach that attracted you?
Oh, geez. Everything, they're called adaptive resistance exercise machines. ARX is the company that based out of Austin, Texas. And they are the first of their kind. It's the greatest fitness equipment on the planet. And what I mean by that is it's motorized resistance. Okay. So it's like a Bowflex machine. It's an entire gym. Every single machine and weight and pulley system that you could literally think of condensed into this one machine that is motorized, that is providing you real-time networked feedback, right? So you have a screen right in front of your face, and it'll tell you exactly every millisecond, pound for pound, so to speak, what force output you're creating when you create force, when you push it away from you, and what you're resisting coming back at you, almost like a trash compactor, right? So the machine moves at its own cadence. So you set the speed, right? So it's either 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds, 3 seconds, 10 seconds in each direction, right? And all you're doing is trying to either make that thing move faster, which you'll never be able to do, or you're trying to put so much pressure and force and torque into the machine as it's coming back at you in which to stop the motor, which you'll never be able to do. And what it does is it's got these amazing sensors that it will tell you how much force you're producing and when your muscles, based on a 1 rep max effort algorithm, when you should stop the exercise, like when your muscles have reached an adequate amount of failure or hypertrophy in order to force an adaptive change in the body so that you can become bigger, faster, stronger over time. I mean, it is the closest thing on this planet to perfection when it comes to exercise. I feel so grateful to have been able to find them and use them in my business, because I don't know if I would use anything else than these things, but it's also networked. And so all of your information gets saved and stored in the cloud, and you have perpetual access to this data, to this feedback of how am I progressing over time. And so what that also allows from a fitness and technology perspective, to kind of go back to my Jetsons thing, is I really fell in love back in 2017. I fell in love with Bitcoin and blockchain technology, and the utilization of, I'm not really a big altcoiner, so to speak, but I do believe in utility tokens, and I do believe that we will eventually become a society of nothing else will be free. I think everything is going to transition into micropayments and reward systems with particular tokens. And so being able to access the internet and being able to access, crypto wallets and blockchain technology, and incorporate that into fitness and incorporate that into an incentive structure, and then possibly even use the data for my clients in order to convince insurance companies to lower their premiums because they're actually lower risk people, or sharing their information with doctors in real time because it's their information. It's not ours, right? Like, I'm not like saving and holding all this information and selling it to third parties. It's their stuff. But I feel like because now exercise is networked, decentralized, potentially, it's going to revolutionize the entire industry. And I think there are so many people who aren't even ready for it. They don't even understand the words that I just said.
Isn't it also the case, John, that with these ARX machines that you can massively reduce the amount of time that is needed for a successful workout?
Yeah. So most clients, they spend maybe 20 minutes a week, 30 max, using these machines. When I'm home and I have access to them, because of the intensity that I bring to my own personal workouts, I rarely exercise at all more than about 15 minutes a week is usually about the max. It's usually 1 day a week for about 15 minutes. I do each body part of my body one time, maybe two, depending on, maybe how I'm feeling or how much sleep I got the night before, or maybe who's around me for, motivation. But the point is, I'm able to utilize this technology so perfectly that the machine tells me when to stop. And so, I'm only doing, say, a chest press or something, right? Or I'm only doing like a lat pull down. I'm only doing that for anywhere between 60 to 90 seconds, but I'm doing it, basically with like literally life or death intensity, so that I can maximize the fatigue and the damage of the muscle fibers. But I only do it to the most appropriate place because the machine will tell me exactly when to stop.
There's a lot going on under the hood with those machines, John, but I think the strong core message there for people to bring them into that world is just the amount of time that can be saved on a workout. And we all feel too busy, we're too distracted, social media, smartphones, and all of that. So I think the core message you really should push there is that compressed time frame for the workout. How will you judge if your change mission has been successful or not, John? What's the benchmark for that?
I think, honestly, okay, so personally, I think the benchmark, it's a moving target, so to speak. The benchmark for success for me personally is if I can, well, I guess it's technically personal and professional, but if I can operate Biofit successfully enough, if I can find enough humans who believe in my willingness to want to help them, and they subscribe to my particular way of doing it, if I can find enough of them, in the next, I'm 38. In the next 40 years, if I can find enough of those people in order to operate Biofit or something similar to it and have a comfortable life. I'm not very flashy. I don't require, making a lot of money, and staying out of debt. If I can keep the business profitable, out of debt, keep myself out of debt, and if I never sit down and consider and or regret going back to or leaving the Army, that would be success for me. If I never have to have that conversation with myself, then I know I was successful.
Good answer, John. And what will you do if Biofit does not work out?
I don't even know if that's an option, honestly. If for some reason I had to close the doors on Biofit, I think, Biofit it's a name, it's an idea, right? Very much so, it's not a thing. I mean, it is a business, it is a thing, it's a lot of things, but it's an idea. And so if the concept of Biofit doesn't work out, then I would imagine I would literally I would go get a job somewhere to make sure that, my family is taken care of, my son can eat, and that my bills are paid. And I would just start from scratch. I would save money. I would try to meet somebody that believes in what it is I'm trying to do, and just learn from my mistakes. Like, why did it not work? And I would just do it all over again, but hopefully do it a little bit differently, a little bit better. But the idea, right? The dream that I have of what Biofit is currently representing, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing that. I've already made up my mind. So if Biofit doesn't work, something will.
If you think back, John, to an important moment in your life as a young adult, what advice, knowing what you know now, would you give to yourself back then at that moment?
Oh my gosh. That's a tricky question, because you kind of feel like, philosophically, you're like, well, how could you have ended up here if, all of the things that you did or the decisions that you made and didn't make, kind of lead you up to this place. It's getting kind of deep, but
I will share my answer while you're thinking about it, John.
Please.
My advice to myself would be to, when you have that feeling of being stuck, don't think that that's the way it has to be forever. And actually, really, the situation probably just demands that you get a lot more creative, more ambitious, think bigger, be bolder, and basically do whatever is necessary within legal and ethical boundaries to get unstuck and move forward.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. That reminds me a lot of like, do you know who Gary Vaynerchuk is?
Yeah, Gary V for sure.
I would say, um, I don't listen to a lot of his stuff, but I do that. But just as you're telling me about be more ambitious, um, that reminds me of advice that he gave to young people in their 20s, right? Like take as much risk as you can possibly afford or have an appetite for, right? Like, because those are the years that you can really just mess stuff up. You can make some not hopefully not like life-changing decisions, but you can fail miserably over and over and over in your 20s and still in your 30s like rebound, come back. I mean, normally like in your early 20s, that's kind of when your parents are still in the picture too. So, you kind of have a little bit of a safety net. But I would say for me, you know, I remember being very young. I did not come from money at all. Money was never even spoken about in my household. I can remember not necessarily having to want for much. Basic needs were obviously met. And I had some luxury things that, my mom would be able to afford at times. But I can remember being around adults where money was being talked about, and it seemed like it was a scarcity mentality. There was never enough. And, debt collectors would call on the phone, quite a bit. And so I remember making a very conscious, very vivid commitment that I would never not have money. And so what that did, and I was in my mid-teens, I think what that did was that did two things. One, it made me chase money as fast as I could. Everything was about money, right? Whatever job I was going to get, making six figures was imperative. And just climbing whatever ladder, didn't matter what the job or the industry or the profession was. I knew that when I was 16, 17, 18, I knew that whatever I did, money was going to be at the finish line. That was my motivation. And I also immediately also felt like I was running out of time in order to acquire it. So if I could go back and do anything based on the lessons I've learned as an adult, is be patient. I'm not running out of time. You're not running out of time. There is plenty of time. The sun and the moon will cycle through so many times and be able to heal so many wounds and provide so many opportunities that it's unfathomable that you can't even think about. And also is stop chasing the money, because the money isn't what's going to make you happy. It's what you give back to other human beings. It's how you show up for the people. And it's how you feel about yourself, the self fulfillment or the self actualization that I truly believe is the thing. It's the feeling of having meaning and purpose in your life. And I feel like there's a lot of people, and this has happened to me before, because before I learned that lesson, I made it to that 6-figure mark, in the military. I got promoted very fast through the ranks. And it just, because I didn't understand what money was, and I didn't really understand who I was and what really truly made me happy and what my core values were, the more money I made, the more problems I had, because the more money I spent. Right. And so then it just became more was never enough, because it was just like this black hole void of unsatisfied desire for just money. Yeah. And so that would be the two things I would tell my younger self, and shake. Like, that's the thing I try to tell my son, right? Like, my son's 10, so he probably doesn't quite understand it yet. But when I'm going to shake the shit out of that kid, and I'm going to say, listen, hopefully these are lessons that you don't have to learn the hard way like I did, but be patient and chase happy. Don't chase money. Because if you chase happy, the money will come. I promise the money will come for whatever it is that you need that money for. It will come. So those two things for me have been so, that's the biggest flip I think that I've made in the last, 20 years.
For me, I would add, John, that I think if you can figure out what your core values are, and then what you need to do is structure your life to serve those values. And I think when people don't serve their values and they're heavily compromised and not living or serving their values, then I think that's where a lot of misery comes from. And a lot of people feel quite unhappy with their lives because they're aware, maybe on an unconscious or subconscious level, they're not serving their core values. And I think that makes a lot of people unhappy.
I would agree. Yeah, I think, I believe in resonance and vibration. I think that everything in the entire universe has an oscillation, has a frequency. And if you're not in your own resonance, if you're not in resonance with who you are at your core, and you're not living that truth, or that, that if you're not living on that vibration, then everything in your life is going to be hard, and you're going to be faced with obstacles constantly, because it's just like this thing, you or this in the world, and you're trying to, you're trying to add up. So that's a great insight.
So we've arrived at the toughest question of the whole interview now, John, which is, if Netflix made a movie of your life, which actor would play you?
Oh man, that's super simple. That's Ryan Reynolds. He's awesome. Yeah, he's handsome, charming. He's funny. I don't get it a lot, but I have been told a lot that my personality is a lot like Deadpool. And so I've been told by some people that I remind them, not specifically of Ryan Reynolds, but I remind them of Deadpool. But yeah, I think he would kill that part.
John, many thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. And you've got an incredible story, and I wish you all the very best with Biofit and the ARX, those ARX machines, in the future. In the next video in this series, I will have a mystery guest, and I will ask a much tougher question than the Netflix actor who would play you in a movie about your life question that I gave to John, that actually he found quite easy, maybe too easy. So if you'd like to see me talking to our next mystery guest and the difficult, controversial, tough question that I asked them, I look forward to seeing you on the next video.